So we're in. And welcome to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Here we bring you detailed analysis of all the top stories making the headlines across the national dailies on a Monday morning. It's the 9th of May 2022. Now remember, you can be part of the show this morning simply by sending your messages across to us on WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. We're streaming live on YouTube. It's youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Hi, YouTube. Please also leave a comment on the live stream. We'll take your reactions as the show progresses. We can also take your tweets at smooth981FM. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Joining us this morning is the famous Mr. C. Good morning.
Good morning, Victor. Good morning, Shopper. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning to you too, Mr. C. And I have Shopper Martins with me in the studio. Good morning, Shopper.
Yes, good morning, Victor Pepper. Right from 6 o'clock when I've been with you. Let's get
Yeah,
into
yeah,
the stories.
yeah. Let's get into it from the Punch newspaper now. Emefiele heads for court as anger spreads over presidential ambition. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria governor, Mr. Godwin Emefieles' alleged involvement in politics on Sunday attracted more strong condemnations, with senior lawyers and other eminent Nigerians calling for his immediate resignation. Now, senior lawyers and top politicians stated that Emefieles' continuous stay as CBN governor was dangerous to the economy. However, the CBN governor had reached out to a constitutional lawyer and human rights activist, Mike Ozokome-san, to seek interpretation of the Constitution and public service rules on public servants seeking elective positions while in office. Mr. C, what do you make out of all of this?
Okay, thank you, Victor. And this is an interesting mix of comedy and sadness. Now, I'm going to explain why. For the past few weeks now, the media has been regaled with uncertainty as to whether the CBN governor will actually declare his intention to run for the office of president. Now, it's been on for a while that he is running. And just like last week, friends of Emefiele support group, and some farmers group supposedly bought the nomination forms worth 100 million naira. Now, he then turns around to say he's seeking the face of God. And when God decides to tell him to run, he will then interest. Now, this is, on a lighter note, this is very interesting because already we have three candidates who God has already told to run, according to them. You have the Minister for Labor, Chris Ngige. You have the Governor of Ebonyi State, and you have Pastor Tunde Bakare. Now, he's also God to tell him the same thing. That's very interesting. Now, on a more serious note, the office of Governor of the Central Bank is a very serious position. It's supposed to be non-partisan, and all over the world, it is technocrats who are appointed to that position, not politicians. Because the idea is this central bank or the reserve bank, depending on the country it's located in, is supposed to be independent. Now, Section 6 of the Central Bank Act is very interesting. It says the governor of the central bank should not engage himself in any other vocation that will constitute a conflict of interest. Now, Emefiele became a member of the APC sometime in February 2021, meaning before now he knew that it was improper and unethical to be a member of a political party. Now, the question will be asked, he's a Nigerian, can't he run? The answer to that is this, it's simple. As a Nigerian, once you fulfill the constitutional requirement, you are eligible to run. However, as central bank governor, you cannot contest for office unless you resign. That is the proper thing to do. That is the proper procedure. Now, despite his denials, a source at the CBN says this morning a suit he's instituting will be heard, seeking an interpretation of the constitutional provisions. Now, there's a debate or question as to whether the office of Central Bank of Nigeria, Office of the Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, is a public office. Now, if the answer is in the affirmative, then he has 180 days to resign before the election. So that will take, so he can comfortably remain in office till August, provided he wins the primaries in 2 weeks.
Mm.
Another school of thought says, if we look at Section 6 of the CBN Act, we take Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act, which is being challenged, then he ought to resign. If you then take into consideration the APC's directives to its office seekers that if you hold an appointive office, resign before contesting. So everything's all up in smoke, but the very fact that he's going to court indicates very strongly and supports the contention that he actually wants to contest, because if he has no interest in contesting, there's no constitutional interpretation he should be looking for now.
Mm.
Now, with regards to the effect on the economy, foreign portfolio investors are watching. The world is watching. We say we're looking for investors to come into the economy, yet you have the head of your central bank who is openly pursuing a political ambition on a platform of the ruling party. That sets off negative feedback to the international community. This will have an effect on the stock market here. This will have an effect on our credit rating. The effect could be widespread and long felt. Now, he has to do the honorable thing, and my advice to him is please resign. If you believe you're that popular and you have something to offer Nigerians, resign from the position of central bank. Do not drag the central bank into political murky waters.
It's quite interesting, though, Mr. C, because he joins an already crowded arena and with a number of heavyweights in there. So it was quite interesting to see that the role he already has, which affects Nigeria directly and has so much impact, he's now leveraging it or trying to give it up for another role that has an uncertain future. People could question why.
Well, final note, any decision the central bank takes from this date going forward, unnecessary questions will now rise up. Is this really a decision the CBN would have taken, or is this an APC directive? Because as an APC member, he's bound to take the directives of the party.
But he's still saying that he hasn't come out officially to say I want to be president. People bought the forms for him.
Victor, let's even assume those facts are actually correct and not what they seem to be. What is he in court trying to do? If he has no intention of running, he hasn't declared, why are you seeking a constitutional interpretation? I'm not looking for a constitutional interpretation of the provisions that relate to eligibility for contesting.
And doesn't it go against the mandate of devoting the whole of their time to the service of the bank while holding office?
Very correct, Chopin.
All right, we have quite a number of messages. I think we should just jump
So
right
many
in.
messages, a sea of green. Let's go for it.
Frank from Bega says, good morning, Mr. C. Please let's be clear. God is a supreme being, and we all have different supreme beings we call God. They are probably talking about a different God. I don't know what Frank means there.
All right, then, Frank. We have this one. Emeka from Ikeja saying the CBN governor is a federal civil servant, even though he was appointed from the private sector. CBN is a Nigerian bank. CBN staff are all Nigerian workers. The amended constitution stipulates that civil servants have the right to belong to a political party, tender their resignation 30 days before the general election. I don't know why we like basing an intellectual argument on our emotions. He goes on to say, has the CBN governor broken any constitutional law? Tajuddin from Limosha says, all these God's politicians, in quotation marks, are clearly lying because God does not contradict. Well, everybody seems to be taking the God angle here.
Well, Dami sends a message in. Dami's from sending this from Ikorodu. He says, why do all these friends buying nomination forms remind me of the youths earnestly seek for a batch of 1990s? The more the game changes, the more it stays the same.
This one in from Joyce. Wow. Or rather, this one in from Yinka Bolu, sorry about that, saying, seeking interpretation of the CBN Act, please. Was the act written in Greek? And who are these groups picking up forms for everyone? Can the media um, do their job and let's have names, especially those ones that picked up the forms for the CBN governor? I just hope they're not the farmers they gave loans to and are yet to pay back.
And Deji from Allen Avenue says, Mr. C, the governor of the central bank was a card-carrying member of the PDP before he was made the CBN governor. Once Buhari confirmed his appointment, he simply ported to the APC. He should just resign and face his ambitions and leave our treasury alone.
And the messages keep coming in, but we have stories that we want to bring to you. So let us take a look at the suspension of flights, domestic airlines call of action. This coming in from the Vanguard newspaper. And I'm going to take a quote from the statement signed by the Airline Operators of Nigeria president, Alhaji Sarina, who said, now the statement read, further to numerous calls from the highest echelons in government with promises to urgently intervene in the crises being faced by airlines due to the astronomical and continuously rising cost of Jet A1, the AON has acceded to requests to withdraw the action for the time being while we allow for a fresh round of dialogue with government in the hope of reaching an amicable solution. And there you have it. That's the official information that was put out. But then, Mr. C, we also saw another side of the story where over the weekend we saw dissension within the ranks, as we saw first Ibom Airlines and Dana Air also breaking the ranks and continuing, saying that they would continue operations. I mean, what was your response, first of all, to the news that came out on Friday? Although we had seen the build up to this, and then the about turn, just still within the same weekend.
Okay, thank you, Shopper. So, like you rightly said, on Friday they served notice. The airline operators of Nigeria served notice that from Monday, today, they will be suspending operations nationwide. Now, it's instructive to note that the conditions or the problems that persisted or existed as at Friday are still existing. None of them has been resolved. Now, they were particularly complaining of because the price of aviation fuel or jet A1 has risen to about 700 naira per liter. Now, from the statement, they received calls, received promises, dialogue to be opened. How does that solve the problem? Now, all over the world, the operating costs for an airline, 40% of those costs are taken up by aviation fuel. In Nigeria, it is 95%.
That leaves very little margin for anything else.
Correct. You haven't brought into play maintenance, you haven't brought into play.
But Mr. C, also, where did you get that figure from?
The same airline operators of Nigeria.
Right. So wouldn't they have a vested interest in making sure those numbers seem a little high?
So let's even say it's not 95%. The dollar has risen in value against the naira, right? Aviation fuel has risen, right? The purchasing power of Nigerians is reducing every day. Inflation is hitting the value of the naira every day. 1 million naira in January, 1st of January 2022 is not the same value of 1 million naira today. Now, they have to take their planes out for C checks. Of course, although there's some local maintenance organizations here now, they can't handle the entire demand. So the bigger question is, what is this dialogue supposed to achieve? When is it supposed to achieve it? Because the government has been talking to different organizations about different problems, and nothing has been resolved yet. And we're heading into an election in 2 weeks. In fact, primaries start from next week, if I'm not mistaken. And the big masquerade of them will end of the month. So this doesn't give room for comfort. I don't know why Ibom Air and Dana pulled out. I don't know whether they're not affected by the crisis in the aviation sector.
Well, they had already, both of them talking about, first of all, business and how they needed to continue operations, and they had parties' vested interests to which they were beholden, and also contracts with the people who have bought tickets that they needed to fulfill.
Yeah, fair enough. But in all of this, we must also make sure that passenger safety is maintained.
Well, we need to take a break. When we come back, we'll look through your messages. Quite a number of them coming in. You too can be part of the show by sending a message to us on WhatsApp 0809-444-0981. Don't jump to the stage.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, so don't worry. What will happen? I'm going to sprint through 3 and 4 very quickly
Okay.
because they're pretty straightforward. In fact, 3, 4, 5. I can do them within the next 6 to. I'll do like 2 minutes for a story.
Just take your time.
Look, there's really nothing much to say.
We don't really need to do all of the.
So do we come back?
Yes, we do. I'm noticing that these messages are not showing that they're being read. So we don't know which one to do.
We took up so we have to
Did we take T? No, we haven't taken it. But we will move on. We'll start from 10. And then miss out 10 because he's already sent a message.
To enjoy boundless transaction with all without data. All money now on First Money. You first. First Bank.
Smooth 98.1.
Welcome back. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. We're getting straight into your messages.
Yes, got this one. And B from Lecky saying Section 9 of the CBN Act says he can't have another vocation, period. Referring obviously to Emefiele. Says the section on conflict of interest relates to involvement in charitable activities, unless he's saying the APC is a charitable activity and non-partisan. Do we even need to talk about Section 84 of the Electoral Act of 2022? Would this not raise questions about the independence of CBN's policies over the last 5 years?
And D from Alausa says, well said, Mr. C. I've always suspected there's something amiss with Mr. Emefiele as he has gotten the CBN directly involved in all sectors of the economy as if it's a commercial bank. Now it's clear it is more about personal agenda for him.
And Nerochello from Ogudu says, if the CBN governor and the Chief Justice can openly belong to a party, then I wouldn't be shocked if the INEC chairman also declares. If NCC can regulate the telco's price, why can't other industries borrow a lead?
All right, so let's keep this going. We have stories in now from the Vanguard newspaper. Power generation falls 25% as discos reject 371 megawatts. Mr. C.
Okay, so thank you, Victor. So there's more buck passing going on between the discos and the transmission company of Nigeria. Now, power generation dropped again last weekend to about 3,320 megawatts from 4,446 megawatts. Now, the transmission company of Nigeria says the discos are still rejecting electricity sent to them. On the other hand, the discos are saying we're undersupplying what we've asked for. Either way, there's a problem because Nigerians are not receiving the right amount of electricity they should be getting. And frankly speaking, we're tired of all the excuses, the buck passing. Can people just sit down and do their jobs? Whether you're the discos, whether you're the Gencos, whether you're TCN, there's still underlying problems in that industry. And very quickly, I will summarize them. The Gencos are generating power. They're not being paid for. They're not being paid for all the power they generate. The transmission company is unable to wheel all of that power distributed to the distribution companies. The distribution companies cannot take all the power given to them and are unable to remit all the money they receive from the end consumers. So until this quagmire, until this chaos is sorted out, we're going to continue to read more depressing stories about buck passing and poor output.
Okay, and we move on now to this day news. NCC rejects Telecom's operators' request for tariff increase. Now, they're saying that any such decision must be fair to the subscribers and engender healthy competition amongst service providers. Now, Mr. C, we've seen the figures, and we know that at least one of the telcos has recorded 96.8 billion naira in profit after tax in the first quarter of this year, which is about 31.3% increase in profit. And then we've seen revenue increases for at least two other telcos, although with the caveat, and we do know that revenue does not necessarily equate to profit. So when you see, the information that's around, what do you say?
Okay, so it's a very interesting catch-22 situation, and I'll explain why. Now, we are all witnesses to the rise in the cost of doing business in Nigeria, especially in 2022. The NCC cannot be unaware of this rise, especially with regards to diesel. Now, let's be honest. The base stations, the transmission stations cannot rely on the public power grid. That is suicide from a business perspective. They have to run on diesel. They have to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not negotiable. So, how do they do that? Primarily by diesel. Maybe they're using gas, maybe they haven't transited. Some may be using solar, maybe not. Now, telecom operators are saying our costs have risen. Forget the profits we're declaring, our costs have risen. Now, when we analyzed the story last week, I did say that 40% was a bit excessive. But for the NCC to outrightly reject everything is baffling because how are they supposed to survive? Because if they turn around tomorrow and say, okay, to get around this cost problem, we need to lay off workers. The same NCC will get up and say you can't do that, or you can't throw Nigerians into labor market. Something has to give. Now they need to sit down the telecom operators. Clearly, you rejected 40%. However, if we are going to be true to ourselves, the tariffs need to be increased. By what percentage, I'm not sure. But it has to be done alongside the customer's interest in getting better service for what they're paying. The telecom operators are looking at the financial side, but they should also be prepared to look at the service side and make sure that they step up their game.
So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because why would consumers and customers pay more for service that is of a lower quality than they used to receive before?
Okay, so to answer your question, if I was advising the telecom operators, I'll tell them focus on service first. Let them get used to the service. When they're used to the service, you then tell them this is the cost of delivering this level of service. If you want it to continue, pay the increase. If you don't want it, then we can drop our service delivery.
Well, let's move from the NCC now to the Punch newspaper, where Serap, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, has sued President Buhari over pardon for ex-governors Darie and Nyame. I know we talked about this on the show when Mr. President decided to give them pardon. Now, Serap has dragged the president to court. Perhaps asking for proper interpretation. In fact, they're asking that he declares it illegal, incompatible with the oath of office and public interest, the recent pardon that he granted these former governors, Mr. C.
Okay, Victor, thank you. Like you rightly said, we did analyze the story here, and I like Serap, I like what they do, but I think on this suit, they've missed the target, and I'm going to explain why. Messrs. Darie and Nyame were 2 out of 156 Nigerian convicts,
159.
159 convicts that were pardoned. Why is Serap focused on these two gentlemen? All 159 of them committed criminal offenses, were tried in court, and were found guilty and accordingly sentenced.
Could it be that these former governors had their days in court for over a decade and finally they get their time in jail and in less than 5 years they are pardoned?
So why are we focusing on? I'm not supporting corruption. I'm not justifying corruption. But when you single out 2 out of 159, are you alleging that for those 2 he didn't exercise his powers properly, but for the remaining 157 he did it properly?
No, but does this
What
also
would be the
embolden
workload
the
and-
governors who are in office, some who've left, who some of their citizens in their state are saying when they get out of office, we're going to prosecute, we're going to take them to court for misappropriation of funds, just like these 2 have
Okay, so
gotten pardoned.
remember that the factors that were considered, age was one of them, health was one of them, medical conditions. And both governors seemingly satisfied both conditions. So I struggle to see how Serap is going to win this particular suit. I really struggle because on the face of it, from a moral perspective, maybe they shouldn't have been given a pardon. But from a legal perspective, unless you can clearly show that the president abused his powers, I don't see how you're going to win it.
All right. Guardian News now. ASUU, anxiety as indefinite strike may begin today. Sources have said that the union's national leadership might make its decision public today as to whether it is going to go on this indefinite strike. This coming in as the second round of an 8-week warning strike by the members of the union comes to an end with what seems to be very little movement.
Okay, sure. But so it was actually interesting for me to find out it was an 8-week warning strike. I thought it was indefinite from start.
Mhm.
Now,
We're asking just how long
The
warning
same
strikes
thing,
go for.
yeah.
so if in 2 months
Mm.
none of your demand has been met, they haven't tried to even meet you halfway. What use is an indefinite strike? Really? We're getting, like I said earlier in the show, from this week to the end of the month, primaries all over the place. So, and the Minister of Labour, who should chair this, is focused on getting the presidential ticket.
Minister of
Excuse me,
State for Education as well.
Mr. C. The Minister of Labor and Employment has already said that he has done more than Hercules could
Which
when it comes to this.
which would be what precisely? It's not enough to speak with sound bites. What exactly have you done? Okay, let's assume for the purposes of this conversation, ASUU is asking for 10 naira. Have you even given them 1 naira, 2 naira, 3 naira, and told them, okay, here's a part payment or a down payment. We'll get the balance to you at some point in time. Nothing of the sort. Now they're bothering whether to go on an indefinite strike. I think they should just look at the interests of the students and let these post students, those especially those in final year, graduate.
But hold on, though. The minister already said, Chris Ngige already said that they were going to have resume negotiations this week. So,
Shopper,
Mhm.
in 8 weeks, what happened? Why are you resuming negotiations on as soon as they're about to declare an indefinite strike? They're not being taken seriously.
Okay, let's look at some of the messages quickly before we go. I have this one from Nee. He says, unfortunately, there are several structural imbalances in our system. Cost structure varies across companies within the same industry, not due to efficiency nor strategy, other corruption and other competitive non-sustainable measures. Aviation sector is an example that he put out there. And this one in from Orisha says, as much as we want to have to diverse on the CBN governor, what he did. My issue is with his principal precedent that allows such impunity to take place. The world is watching, and it only shows how much of a banana republic we are. Well, that's the most we can take on the show for today. Thank you very much for sending in your messages, and thank you, Mr. C, for being a part of the conversation live in the studio today. You can catch up with Mr. C on Twitter at Monsieur C with a triple E. That's all. Let's bring you Locker Room at 8:15. Good morning.
First Bank. You first.